Hello. Hi,
Morning.
everyone. Good
Hello, hello.
morning. So, my name's Kathleen. I'm an intuitive energy healer and embodiment coach, and I'm so excited to be here with Stella today. Hello, Stella.
Hi, Kathleen. Hi, everyone. I'm Stella. I'm a death doula, an end of life guide, and practicing grief witch.
I love that. And we wanted to come on today and talk just a little bit about our grief ritual, our upcoming in-person grief ritual that we are hosting two, actually, one in Port Townsend, Washington, and the other in Seattle, Washington. So we wanted to just talk a little bit about these and help people get a better understanding of what it's about and why you should come. And so we just want to start by first like talking about who should come to a grief ritual. And really, the short answer is everybody, anybody and everybody, right? Because we've all experienced grief at some point in life, and we all will experience grief. It's a great equalizer in that regard. And the more that we can honor our grief and understand our grief and have practices which can do that, then the better able we are to deepen our healing. And so really is for everybody who's ever had grief. And it could be grief that's really recent, and it could be grief that's a long time ago, and everything in between. It could be grief that's personal, and it could be grief that's global. It could be grief for the world. So there's no grief that's too big or too small, truly. It could be grief for a person or for a pet, for a place or an event. All these griefs are valuable and important and worthy. And it's common, I think, that people get into this practice of, well, I had this little grief, but other people are suffering far worse. And so therefore we minimize our own grief. And that's so not helpful. It really diminishes our own felt lived experience and devalues what we are going through. And yes, there will always be suffering that's greater and less than any personal experience one of us might be having. And that's just always going to be true. But it doesn't mean that our own grief isn't valuable and isn't worthy of being witnessed. Yeah, do you want to add anything to that, Stella?
Yeah, something that I've learned in my own healing experience is if I am not honoring and acknowledging the experiences that I've had in my own life, no one else is going to create that space for me. It is my personal responsibility to bring that story forward. It's just like all of the different parts of me, right? They all get to exist, they all get a place at the table. And what happens is if we have grief at the table, by the way, everyone does, when grief is at the table, but grief never gets a voice, what do you think happens then in our bodies and in our daily lives? Well, those grief whispers are going to get louder and louder and louder and louder and louder, and it will get our attention in some way, shape, or form. And the unfortunate truth and reality of the times that we are living in today is our grief experiences are it's not going away, you know. I think part of walking the healing path and doing the deep spiritual work that we all do here is recognizing and honoring the love, the joy, the excitement, the beauty of the path that we are walking on. And in addition, we also need to be recognizing the sadness, the sorrow, the despair, the grief, our anger. It's not high vibe, low vibe, right? We don't it's not hierarchical. And if it is that way, then I feel like that is living more in a patriarchal hierarchy within our own bodies. When we bring them here and we offer unique and sacred space to honor both of these, it diminishes, it gets rid of the hierarchy within our own bodies. Um, and it brings it brings us to wholeness, right?
Humanize this.
It humanizes us. It
Yeah.
it's not just love and light, and it's also
Yeah.
not just being in the underworld being sad.
Yeah.
It's both,
Yeah.
and that is what it means to be human. And
Yeah.
when we have time to give each of these a voice, that is when we complete the full cycle and the full circle, and we are living wholly and fully embodied.
Yeah.
Kathleen, you
Yeah.
might have some ideas on what embodiment is.
Yes. And I just want to reflect on a couple things you just said real briefly. One of my teachers used to say it's important to honor all 88 keys of our emotional piano.
Yeah.
And they're all perfectly in tune when we allow them to come forth. None is better or worse than the other. Middle C isn't better than low D or anything like that. So it's a beautiful analogy. And to your point, when we don't honor it, I like to say that it'll come out sideways. So it might be a snarky comment to a loved one. It might be some poor behavior over there. It's going to get our attention, as you said, in some way. So yes. And one thing we're really excited about with these workshops is the embodiment aspect. And both Stella and I do a lot of our own personal embodiment work and that with clients. And the truth of the matter is, like, emotional energy lives in our bodies. These bodies are the vehicle for which this energy runs through, and so much more. And when we're not honoring and letting this emotional energy flow and move through, it gets stuck in the tissues. You might have heard the comment or the line that the issues are in the tissues, where the body will keep the score. And so there's this sense that when this emotional energy, which is an energy, emotions, energy in motion, is not flowing and moving, it will get stuck in the body and trapped. And then that can come out. It might start like some tension, oh, just feeling some tightness and tension. But over time, this can really have detrimental impacts to our overall health and well-being at the physical level. So never doubt that like emotional work is actually physical work as well. And this is why often after a big cry or a big excitement, we'll just be exhausted, right? Like the big emotional heavy lifting that we can sometimes do in big events can leave us feeling drained because we're just feeling that in the physical body that has to catch up. So the practices that we have are aimed to help do what, honestly, in my opinion, we rarely do in this world, and we're not very good at. We're really good at living from the head, and we're not so good at living from the body. And so we're working, and our aim is to then bring forth some practices and some opportunity to move the body and to let the body be an expression of grief as well. So don't let that scare you. Let that really excite you. It's very powerful work. And I've found in my experience that I can process mentally over and over and over for days, months, years, and it'll still stay there. But when I process something in my body, boom, it shifts, it releases, it switches. There's big shifts that happen that way. So it's super powerful work.
Yeah, you get really to like the root and the core of it quite quickly when you can feel it and move it through your body. What I've learned over the past few years, not everyone knows, both my parents actually passed away last year within just several months of each other in their mid 60s. And before then, I would have said that I'm relatively decent at processing my feelings, a deeply feeling person, highly sensitive person, in tune with my emotions. And then we know when something really big and heavy comes, when we experience deep grief. The physicality of grief was something that I was really surprised by, and it really helped to solidify the notion that if we are not processing our emotions, they will manifest physically in our body. And it's not a bad thing. It's giving us clues as to where it's being stored in our body and how we can be better allies to our grief. Um,
Yeah.
and also, there's there's not any blame, right? Like we come from a world that is designed to keep us in our heads, right? It wants to separate us from our bodies because if we were really in tune and in sync with our bodies, well, that might lead to some other creative things, and that is just not how our system is designed. And so there's no blame if that is your experience. That's normal. I would say that that's like like very normal experience.
Absolutely.
Kathleen and I feel really strongly and passionately about is that in our society, in our culture, we have so many problem solving spaces where we come together and we brainstorm and we write things and we organize and we outline and we, think about all the ways that we're going to do X, Y, and Z. And those are so important and they are so needed. And also, we have to have feeling spaces just as equal to. And when I experienced this big, deep grief and am still experiencing this big, deep grief, what I really wanted, what I really desired was to be enveloped in community with other people who had walked that same path or who had experienced that big, deep grief and didn't say things like, well, at least they're in a better place, or at least you got to be next to them, or at least you got to say goodbye, or other things that are so intended to be helpful. And instead, what happens is that it diminishes or it makes it feel like it's not an okay thing to talk about my grief or to bring my full self to someone else. They can't hold it because we aren't taught how. Again, not their fault. We are not taught how. So, like I was saying, Kathleen and I feel really strongly and really passionately that bringing forward these, we call them grief rituals, right? But it is a deeply sacred healing circle. And we're going to leave our thinking brains outside and we're going to bring our bodies, we're going to bring our heart, we're going to bring our soul and our spirit to this work. We aren't going to talk about our grief. We talk about our grief so much. We have so many opportunities to talk and to dissect and to pull apart. And how do I say it so that other people are going to understand, right? We're not going to do any of that. So rest assured, you won't have to share what your grief is with other people who you don't necessarily know. That's important.
Right. Right. And nor will you have to reflect other people. So if you don't know what to say, often it's hard to know. Don't worry about that either. It's not that kind of a space.
Right. Kathleen, do you want to talk about a little bit like what we are going to be doing in
Yeah.
grief?
Yeah. And yeah, thanks for bringing in like why it's so important to do this in community. There's so much power in witnessing and being seen. Never underestimate just the power of presence and how healing that is. And so being witnessed and seen allows for a deeper level of healing. And then to bring that into the body expands that and deepens that even more. So we will be doing some of that witnessing and seeing in community, in a circle with each other, and then also bringing through movement. And we won't go and share all of the details because we want you to experience it a little with a fresh mind as well, and beginner's mind, open mind. But we'll be bringing movement and expression as well to the grief and to witnessing, and then bringing in elemental aspects of ritual so that we are honoring the elements as our bodies are an element of nature as well. So yeah, there's several elements to it for this short 3-hour period.
That's right. In addition to our circle and creating a really beautiful um, circle of ritual and container, we also know that we are going to need a larger container to help us hold all of this grief, right? And so, in that way, we're really looking to our great mother, Mother Earth, Gaia, who welcomes this grief, the elements that is what nature is designed for, it's how it is intended. Our grief, our bodies, are food for the earth. And the better, like the more practice we have in releasing it from our bodies and giving it as an offering to Mother Earth, it restores us back to that natural cycle of life and death.
Yeah. Yeah, beautiful. And that natural connection with nature, of which we are a part. Yeah. And I want to just, oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I mean, imagine if we didn't have to walk around holding on to all of our grief at all times, like being
Yeah.
so careful with our grief cup that it doesn't spill or slosh over or like come
Right.
out when driving at really inappropriate times on the wrong people. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
had a space
100%.
where we could empty our grief cup in a safe and responsible but also beautiful community space.
Yeah.
We didn't
Yeah.
have to hold it, our bodies
Yeah.
didn't hold it.
It would be incredible. And just as you were saying that, we'll offer it to Mother Earth. I just felt this settling and this kind of sigh move through my body. It's just like, oh, right. Mother Earth can hold it. Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. And I want to just address briefly before we conclude shortly the piece about joy, because it might be interesting to see the word joy in the same title as grief ritual. And both of us also feel really strongly that when we allow for grief, which is often an emotion that we feel less comfortable sharing for a variety of reasons, we tamp that. If we tamp that down, or if we diminish it, or if we hold it back so it's not feeling fully expressed, we're actually doing that for all of our emotional body. We can't selectively numb. We can't selectively diminish. So when we hold back a part of us, we are holding back all elements of our emotional expression. It's just the way it works. And this is why when we move through an embodied expression of grief, as an example, for an emotion that is sometimes harder to express, we can also then liberate all of the repressed emotions, such as joy and love and everything else. And so in my own personal grief work, I am sometimes surprised after a big expression of just deep grief, a big smile will emerge and I will suddenly start to feel ecstatic, or tears of joy will arise. So really trust us on this. It is powerful, and it's the truth that when we liberate one emotion, we liberate them all. We start to liberate that emotional body, that emotional energy that lives within us. And it's so rich and varied. So it's a very a beautiful, surprisingly beautiful process in many ways in that regard.
Right. It's not grief or gratitude. It is grief and gratitude. And for
Yeah.
those of us who have experienced big grief, deep grief, big loss, we know that that makes us even more highly attuned to noticing those small moments of absolute beauty and joy. And
Yeah.
just the tiniest little gesture, like someone, sending a quick text of like, hey, I'm thinking of you, or hey, I remember that today was the anniversary of something, like that really helps us to appreciate those little moments. And it breaks our heart, but in like the best way, right? In like the most
Yeah.
loving way. And that is the beautiful ebb and flow of grief and gratitude. I used to think of it as like two opposite sides of a spectrum. Like, oh, why wouldn't you
Mm.
want to be living on like the gratitude side of things? Like, who would want to live on the grief side of things? No, thanks. That sounds really hard and scary. What I learned is that it's more of like an infinity loop, and they're always flowing back and forth between each other, and the thread that flows back and forth is love, and that's what it is.
I I love that. And I'm just feeling when you get to that sweet spot in the middle where you can really understand and honor both sides of it, it's so powerful, so empowering as well. Yeah. And
Yeah,
that's right in the heart.
that's hard work.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
So,
so what happens, last question, what
yeah.
happens if you don't do grief work? Well, in a nutshell, nothing really, right? Nothing really changes, nothing really happens, nothing bad is going to happen. But we do know that if you do engage in grief work, it's going to help you lead a fuller, more expansive, more beautiful path in this life that we're all walking together. It's only grief
Yeah.
and love and joy are our biggest expansive feelings, right? And if we are walking a path that acknowledges all of them, we are playing all with all of the keys on the piano, so to speak.
Oh, piano. Yep, indeed. I love it. So thank you for spending this time with us. And we'll put the link to the grief rituals to both of them in the comments. And do know that one is coming up next weekend. So Mother's Day weekend. It's the Saturday before Mother's Day, which could be a lovely time to honor some grief work there. And registration does close early for that. So we want to make sure that you're aware of that. And feel free to reach out to us with any questions, because we love to talk to you. And we're so excited to bring this together and work together in this way. Yeah.
Happy Beltane!
Oh, that's right.